Hi, welcome to my thesis defense. My name is Alexandra Thompson. My thesis title is Evaluating the Effect of Self-Esteem and Contextual Variables on Discounting of Hypothetical Food Choice and Weight Gain. The prevalence of obesity is steadily increasing in the United States. The World Health Organization reported that obesity has tripled since 1975. In 2015 to 2016, a reported 93.3 million adults were considered obese. Such rises in obesity rates can have serious long-term financial and health-related consequences. To try and combat this epidemic, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Agriculture published dietary guidelines for Americans. It was their hope that these guidelines serve as recommendations to promote healthy eating patterns of behavior. However, these guidelines have not been effective since recent data show that adults do not eat a sufficient amount of fruits or vegetables. Only 12.2% of adults met the intake requirement for fruit, and only 9.3% met the intake requirement for vegetables. Obesity can be examined in association with impulsivity in economics. In order to combat the plethora of readily available, high-calorie foods, a significant level of self-regulation is necessary for individuals to avoid obesity and weight gain. Thus, the idea of self-regulation was first studied in the 1960s by Walter Mischel. In 1972, Mischel published a study that is now commonly referred to as the marshmallow experiment. In this experiment, the children were offered 1 marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows after a delay. This experiment set the tone for a longitudinal study of delayed gratification. So moving on to behavioral economics. Behavioral economics encompasses elements of traditional economics, psychology, cognitive neuroscience, and behavioral pharmacology. Traditionally, economics assumes all individuals are fully aware of the benefits and costs associated with all possible behaviors. But under this assumption, people should behave in a manner which maximizes their longevity through the use of carefully calculated and rational decision-making. Of course, such behavior is rarely illustrated consistently across a person's lifetime, and behavioral economics is designed to further understand why people do not always make the decisions to maximize their long-term gains. So delayed discounting is a way that we do this. Delayed discounting is the effective measure of self-control and impulsivity. Generally, this involves participants choosing between 2 hypothetical outcomes. One outcome is immediate, while the other outcome is paired with a delay. At the start of each delay, the amounts for each option are identical. One amount is immediate choice is then decreased on consecutive trials, while the delayed amount remains constant. Money is commonly used as a commodity as amounts are easily adjustable. However, researchers have explored how other commodities are discounted using similar procedures. For example, Weller and colleagues in 2008 used a delayed discounting to measure impulsivity and self-control, among 57 healthy weight individuals and 55 obese individuals. The results of this study showed greater discounting in obese women than healthy weight women. The goal of the current study was to enhance the field's understanding of how time and contextual variables impact health-related decisions, specifically the decision of eating high or low-calorie meals. Okay, now we're going to move on to the methods section. We'll begin with participants. All the participant demographic information is summarized in this table. There were 39 total participants, 29 were female, and 10 were males. The ages of participants ranged from 20 to 70 years old, with a mean age of 38. Participants' mean BMI was 28.4, According to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, a BMI of 28.4 is considered overweight. Furthermore, all participants completed the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale, and it was scored accordingly. So the higher scores on the self-esteem scale are associated with higher levels of self-esteem. There were 40 total points possible. Participants' scores ranged from 23 to 39. The average self-esteem score was 31. Okay, the materials used. A Google Forms survey was constructed to encompass informed consent form, demographic questions, the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale, as well as the 2 discounting tasks. The procedure was fairly simple. The Google Forms survey link was distributed via social media, text messaging, and email, and the survey itself took approximately 20 minutes to complete. Moving on to the visual analysis. Visual and statistical analyses were conducted. In the current study, the indifference points were the weight value at which the participants selected the healthier food option, which resulted in no weight gain. For this study, the mean switch point values were calculated. So after finding each switch point, the numbers were input into the formula under the proportional values here. Once these indifference points were normalized by calculating the proportional values, they were then used to calculate the area under the curve, using the formula listed under AUC values. Additionally, a Pearson's correlation was conducted. This correlation was conducted to evaluate if there was a correlation between self-esteem and weight gain. For the current study, it was hypothesized that the difference would be significant with a p-value of less than 0.05, because a significant difference would indicate that higher self-esteem corresponds to having more self-control or being less impulsive with food. A non-significant difference would indicate that self-esteem does not impact the individual's food choice or the weight gain consequences. Okay, ready for our results. We'll begin with Figure 1. In Figure 1, a discounting curve displays mean switch points for the current weight and the hypothetical weight of 10 pounds. The mean switch points were calculated for each delay: 3, 7, 14, 30, 100, 300, and 600. A visual analysis of these data illustrates an inverse trend, meaning what you're seeing is as the delays or days increase, the AUC becomes larger, indicating less impulsive choices and more self-control. To further explain, participants were more impulsive for a lesser amount of days and less weight than they were for the more days and a greater amount of weight. Okay, moving on to Figure 2. So the X in this graph is representative of the mean AUC scores for all participants. The whiskers on the graph demonstrate one standard deviation. A higher AUC score is indicative of self-control or less impulsivity. Analysis revealed that the mean AUC score on the current weight survey was 0.02, and the mean AUC values on the survey featuring contextual variables were slightly lower at a 0.01 level. These data reveal that individuals discounted a little bit less steeply when a hypothetical weight gain of 10 pounds in an upcoming event was added. And lastly, the results for the Pearson's correlation. The statistical analysis deemed both of these correlations as insignificant. This finding is inconsistent with the hypothesis and suggests that there is not a relationship between the self-reported measures of self-esteem and the discounting surveys. Okay, moving on to our discussion portion. So the present study required participants to complete 2 discounting tasks which featured patterns of food choice where the commodity to be discounted was the amount of weight gained. This discounting task was used to evaluate how the weight gain was discounted across different delays. The results of this study showed that participants were more impulsive with their food choices when they were eating for a fewer amount of days and gaining less weight. Conversely, when the number of days increased along with the amount of weight, individuals demonstrated more self-control. 23% of the participants did not discount at all. So on this task, to not discount at all, a participant must select the healthier option every time on both surveys. So these participants chose the healthier option even when the higher calorie option had no weight gain consequences. Okay, moving on to our limitations. So first of all, it was a self-report measure, and sometimes these data are inaccurate. The study had a smaller sample size, which may have made a less significant difference. The study also used Rosenberg's self-esteem scale, which is also a self-report measure, but is probably the most commonly used measurement of self-esteem, but it may not encompass the complex nature of self-esteem itself. The weight gain in each delay may not have been significant enough to influence participant responding, as well as the researcher did not control for the reinforcing value of food options presented. And lastly, an online format, it's really impossible to control for background noise and other distractions, as people tend to take these surveys at the comfort at their own home or on their cell phones. Another limitation of the online format is that it's usually distributed to friends and families, so the sample size may not be an adequate representation of a population at whole. So what can we do? Let's see, future research. So adding attention checks to ensure participants are not suffering from fatigue and are still answering accordingly. These 2 discounting tasks were very long, and some could have suffered from fatigue or were blindly answering. And then we want to add a wider variety of food options. So the instructions on the survey read that those food examples listed were just examples, and they were to imagine their own preferred food as they fit into the high and low calorie groups. But I'm unsure if participants actually did this, so future research could just list various types of food, maybe as it would appear on a menu, along with the calories of each meal. That way the words high and low calorie don't impact responses. And then addition of the larger weight values. As mentioned before, the smaller weight values in the delay discounting test may not have been significant enough to influence responding. Administering the surveys in a controlled environment may help everyone have the same experience with limited distractions. And lastly, obtain a more representative sample of the population. Okay, and here are my references. Thank you all for serving on my committee.